Welcome to Marisi Pet Care. I am a full-time dog walker and pet sitter, and this is Butch. He likes to hang out with me, don't you, Bubby? I introduced him to our family last year. I adopted him in July. He was 7 months old, so he is just over a year old now, and he has integrated really well to our family. And so I wanted to give you a couple tips and share a couple things that I did to help make sure that his transition into our home was a smooth one. Now, depending on the animals that you have already in the home, this may be very easy or it may be very difficult. And a lot of that's going to depend on the personalities and the exposure that your other animals have had to other dogs. In my case, before I adopted Butch, I had 2 kittens that are a couple years old now, and I had Betty, my border collie, who's going to be 10 this year. Betty has been exposed to lots of different animals, as I'm a pet sitter and dog walker. When I first started providing pet care, I did boarding in my home. I didn't do that for very long, but I did do it for the first year. And so Betty was exposed to lots of different animals. We would have 1 or 2 extra animals in the house at any given time. I don't do boarding anymore, but it was great exposure for her. Also, the first week that I had her, we had a puppy play date with my best friend, who also adopted a dog about a month before I got Betty. But I digress. I wanted to go over the things that you probably want to consider first. Before you adopt another dog, or if you're considering adopting another dog, you want to take into account the personality and the temperament of the animals that you already have in the home. If you know you've got little divas that bark at every little dog that goes by and try to attack every new dog they see, you can't take them to the dog park, you may have a harder time. Those may be dogs that never really fully acclimate to a new animal in the house. I have seen that with other clients of mine. The majority of animals will grow accustomed to a new dog in the house over time. Some of them will love it from day one. Some of them, it may take a couple months. And there's really no way of knowing that before you bring an animal into the home. A little backstory on my situation. Betty was the first animal that I got, and I got her in Arkansas. We had a house. I was doing a lot of triathlons at the time, so I was very active, and I wanted a dog that could go on runs with me. So that's why I got Betty. When I first brought Betty home, she was the only animal I had in the house. And she was the only animal for the first few years. But I did take her to friends' houses and I introduced her to other dogs. I didn't do the boarding right away because I was still working in the car business back then. And so I would take her on the weekends to a local dog park. That was the dog parks where I lived in Arkansas versus the dog parks in Los Angeles were very different. Most of the dogs and the owners in Arkansas, there were fewer of them. They were healthy for the most part and well behaved. In LA, I never know. So we don't go to the dog parks as much here. And that's just because of the risk of injury, and the parks are much bigger here. They're not really monitored. I've seen animals that were clearly sick and aggressive at the dog parks, and I just don't want either of my animals injured. But back then I did take her to the dog parks and we were safe and it was a good experience. So I'm not saying no to all dog parks because in my own experience, I've had good ones and I've had bad ones. The ones near me are not safe in my opinion, but the ones when I lived in Arkansas were. Think about dog parks. You need to know your area. Maybe go scope it out before you take your dog. One thing that I did here when I first moved here and I was checking out the dog parks is I would take Betty and I would watch her. And if I saw other dogs start to get into trouble, here she is. There's Betty. Because she's a border collie, if she sees other animals start a fight, she wants to jump in and stop them. So I avoid taking her to the dog parks for that reason because she does not need to be a referee in any doggy MMA fights. So the first thing is know the personality of your animal. If you have a little diva at home, they may love a new animal, they may not. It's not fair to the new animal to bring them home only to return them. So what I would probably do in that situation is I would foster to adopt. I would check out foster programs with animals. There's a lot of good foster programs where they will allow you to foster with the intention of adopting. You can get an idea of whether or not the animal is going to be a good fit in your family. So I would try that if you have a little diva. The other thing that you can do is if you're looking at a shelter situation and your dog is your existing dog at home already is very friendly, is even within the shelter programs. Yes, I'm talking about you guys. Even within the shelter programs, they generally don't give you a full refund if you return a dog, but usually within the first 30 days, if the dog's just not a good fit, they usually do allow you to return it and either swap for a different dog, or they call it a donation and your money's gone. So it just depends on the shelter in your area and what their rules are, but the rules vary and they're usually fair. Come here. Come on. This is a good girl. So Betty was adopted from a foster situation, and she was at a border collie rescue group. She was 11 months old when I first got her. And she was good from the very beginning. I was also lucky with Butch because Betty was so good. I really didn't have to take a lot of extra precautions when I brought Butch home because Betty had already been exposed to other dogs. She was a very good girl. She likes other animals. When I adopted my cats, if the cats are fighting, she stops them. She never hurts them. She never bites them. She never gets into a fight with them, but she'll pounce on them if they're hissing at each other and scratching, and she'll make them stop. And she kind of does the same thing with Butch. I've got a couple videos posted where Butch has lost his toy to Betty, usually because I give it to her because she wants to play too, and he's a little toy obsessed. And he will howl and carry on, and Betty will keep his toy from him until he calms down. And once he calms down, she gives it back to him. But what I did with them was when I first brought him home, Betty is less reactive off leash. So I took his leash off, I had her leash off, and I introduced them in the home. Just because logistically I live alone and it was impossible for me to have one dog outside and one dog inside and go get one and introduce them outside and as one person. And I know that Betty was good, so I felt safe bringing him directly into the home, letting her sniff him a little bit and putting him down, and she was just thrilled and happy, and they played from there. If they hadn't gotten along, or if she had barked at him, or if she had had an issue with him being there, then what I would have done is I would have picked up some baby gates. I would have, if I just brought him home and I didn't have any baby gates or any way to separate them while they could still see each other, I would have put him in a crate, which I do have in case of emergencies, and I would have let her sniff him, and I would have cycled each of them in or out of the crate. So one would be in the crate and one would be out, so they could still see each other, they could still sniff each other. And then while I'm doing that, I would probably have one of them in the crate. I'd run to the store, go pick up a baby gate, and I would probably put that as a separation point where I'd either put it up at the end of the hall or at the end of a bedroom, leave the doors open so they can see each other. They're playing now. And allow them to gradually acclimate. And that's what I recommend to my clients is when they first get a new dog, I never leave them alone together for the first few days until I am really sure that they're going to get along and enjoy each other, like these two nuts do. So when I first, you want to take the introduction slowly. You want to have a place where you can separate them, either a separate room or a baby gate. Now, the baby gate wouldn't keep Betty from jumping over it if she wanted to attack a little dog, if that were her personality. And so I would only use the baby gates while I was home. If I wasn't going to be home, I would put one of them in a separate room. And it would just depend on who needed the most monitoring. Or I would put the new one that I don't know or trust in a crate. The crate keeps them from chewing up your furniture, chewing up walls, trying to scratch down doors, pulling curtains down. When I first got Betty, she wrapped her legs around a curtain while barking at somebody walking by. And I was only gone for a couple hours. And when I came home, she looked like a Cirque du Soleil, acrobat with the curtains wrapped around both of her hind legs. She could have gotten hurt. She could have ripped the curtains off the wall. She didn't. I don't know how she did it, but things happen when you bring a new dog home. The other thing with Butch is he likes to, when I first brought him home, he was still a puppy. And so, with puppies, you get all the puppy things. They can chew up shoes or slippers, or his favorite thing is pens and my reading glasses. He loves to chew this section on my reading glasses, and so they get really sharp and scratchy, and then I go to put them on my face and I feel like I've got two razor blades digging into my ears. And so I've learned to keep those up from him. But if I were leaving him for the first time, after bringing him home, I would definitely put him in a crate. Betty, I know, is good out. Him, I didn't, I would put the new dog in the crate is basically what I'm saying. And then while you're home, if they're not getting along, you can let them out of the crate, but have a baby gate up. And if you see that one's jumping over the gate, then you know that's not going to work and you have to try something else. I've also seen customers stack the gates when they have big dogs like German Shepherds or Labradors or Boxers. You can put one gate in the doorway this way or the end of a hallway, and then you can get a second gate and stack it on top so they can't jump over it. And that works really well. Usually that's, it's a short-term thing. You don't want to have gates like that up for very long, but it's just while you're introducing them and they're getting used to each other. Another thing that I like to do is after I can see that they're not going to attack each other or get into a fight, if they're just kind of sniffing, but they're kind of wary of each other, I will grab their leashes and I'll hook them both up and I'll take them for a walk. Walks are very bonding. And when you take a dog on a walk, even if it's a dog I find this as a dog walker, when I have a dog that's a little skittish or even afraid of me, when I leash them up or their owner leashes them up and I take them out and I walk them, they learn really quickly that I'm safe, that I'm in charge of the pack, that I can be trusted. And the pack mentality in a good way kind of sets in and they realize, oh, we're going to go for a walk. This is fun. This is good. We're going to get the sniffs. We can trust her, which means I should be able to trust this one too, because it's all part of the same family. And so I find that a lot of times by the time you're done with a half an hour to an hour walk, when you bring a new dog home, they're much more bonded and it helps relax them too. It helps them settle down. It helps reduce some of their, new dog anxiety, and they're much calmer once they're done with the walk. When I feed them, I do feed them separately for a long time. Until you know that they could eat out of the same bowl and not have a fight, I would separate them. That is a time when many dogs, even docile, easy, sweet dogs, don't want to be messed with. They don't want to share. And so I would, from the start, feed them in separate locations. It's just one less thing you have to worry about. Now, Betty is so sweet and so gentle. She will let Butch eat out of her bowl while she's eating. And a lot of times she'll just keep going and they'll both be eating out of the same bowl. If she's not that hungry, then she'll take a step back and just watch him and wait for him to finish. He's little, so he doesn't eat very much of her food, and then she resumes. If she's extra hungry or it's extra tasty, she'll growl at him and he knows to stay away. They've kind of learned each other's language and they know when the other is up for it and when the other one is not. Betty's always in charge though. Now, during this transition period, it's very important to give your existing dog as much attention as they ever got. You don't want to give them a reason to be extra jealous of the new dog. If they are behaving in a jealous manner, if they're barking or if they're trying to start a fight while you're playing with the new dog, what I would recommend doing is anytime they're exhibiting behavior that you do not want, whether they're being aggressive or they're barking, I would stand up, maybe take the new dog with you for their own safety, but let's say you're on the couch and you're petting the new dog and the old dog is having a problem with that and they're trying to attack the new dog, or they're barking, or they're just throwing a fit in some way. What I would do is I would pick up the new dog. You can put it in a crate, you can put it in another room, but I would stand up and I would walk away from the dog that's behaving badly. Don't look at them, don't talk to them. You can tell them no on your way out, but don't give them any extra attention, because that's what they're seeking, is extra attention, and you don't want to reinforce the bad behavior. You don't want to give all the attention to the new dog. One, you don't want to create a situation where the new dog needs all your attention. It's also not fair to your existing animal. When you get the new dog, you want to give them attention and help them feel comfortable. But really, one of the best ways to do that with a new dog is to not fuss over them excessively, which is the opposite of what you're inclined to do because you've got this new, cute, entertaining creature. They'll relax quicker if you give them some space. If you give them some space, you don't fawn all over them, and you continue to give your existing animal the attention that they're used to, both animals will become comfortable in the home more quickly. If you enjoyed tips like this and you want more, I did write a book. It's called Good Dogs, a foolproof guide for having happy and healthy animals. And there's more details in this book than there are in the video. But this book is available on Amazon. The link is below in the description. And that book is available. It gives you the book I wrote originally for my clients. I had a lot of the same issues coming up and they would ask me, Marie, what do I do about this? Or what do I do about that? If the question came up more than once, or sometimes even if the question just came up once and I thought it was an interesting question, I would do the research, I would find the answer, and I would share it with them. But then originally I had a blog. I don't have the blog anymore, but originally I had a blog. And after writing for a couple of years, I had enough material that I compiled all my blogs and I turned them into a book. And now what I've done is, when I started making YouTube videos, I stopped doing the blog because I enjoyed making the videos more. And so a lot of the same topics that were originally in my blog or in my book are found in video form on this channel. I do have a playlist for pet care, and that is where a lot of these types of topics are going to be. And then most of my shorts are just cute little dogs playing throughout the day. I hope this was helpful to you, and I hope I'll see you next time.